الحمد لله وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ولي الصالحين وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. When we talk about the seerah of Rasul alayhi salatu wassalam, and when you open up any book of seerah about Rasul alayhi salatu wassalam, you will always find the authors presenting the darknesses that was overwhelming the Arab Peninsula back in that time. And from that darkness and in that condition, Rasul alayhi salatu wassalam was born and came about in around 569 AD or 9 Rabi al-Awwal. A lot of people I know celebrate it as 12, the birth of Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam, as a lot of countries even, 12 Rabi al-Awwal, but it's been proven mathematically that his birth, since we know he was born on a Monday, 12 Rabi al-Awwal in that year was not on a Monday. 9 Rabi al-Awwal was on a Monday. So that's a lot of scholars follow that date, and that's the date I follow for the birth of Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam, that he was born on that day. So on that, from that darknesses, that light was born, and Nur Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam on that day. So when we talk about Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam as the final messenger of Islam, he is widely considered to be one of the most influential men in history, not only to us Muslims, even non-Muslims, authors, historians, Orientalists considered him, even though they did not convert to Islam, considered him, he was the most influential man in history. Today, we have the population about 7.7 or 8 billion people. 1/4 of that population is us Muslims. We are 1/4 now, close to 2 billion or a little bit over 2 billion. And it's interesting, I was mentioning to the kids today that before the cancellation of the Islamic Khilafah in the beginning of the 20th century, we were actually a minority in the world, and yet we were a power to reckon with. But now, subhanAllah, we are the largest religion. If you separate Catholicism from Protestants, we are the largest religion in the world, and yet we are the poorest countries, the most illiterate, and very divided. And I will show you as we go through the seerah of Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam how we deviated from his message. As I'm going along, I intended, because all the information that I'm gonna say today you already know, we're just gonna remind ourselves with it, but I'm also gonna bring some of the non-Muslim authors, how they looked and perceived and taught who is our Prophet ﷺ. And the first author that I'm going to bring is a British author. His name is Reginald Bosworth Smith. He said Rasul ﷺ was a Caesar and a Pope in one, but he was the Pope without the Pope's pretensions. You know how is the Pope, when he comes, like at the caravan, he comes in, and when he stops, everyone gotta kiss his hands, and the clothes he wears. Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam was not like that. Caesar without the legions of Caesar, meaning without a standing army, without a bodyguard, without a palace, without a fixed revenue. If ever any man had the right to say that he ruled by the right divine, it was Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. For he had all the power without its instruments and without its supports. He cared not for the dressing of power. The simplicity of his private life was in keeping with his public life. That's how he was. Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam life began in a seemingly conventional manner in the desert of Arabia in the 6th century, When he turned 40 years old, as we know, Allah tasked him with the prophethood and began revealing his final book, the Holy Quran, to him. As a prophet, Rasul ﷺ called people to divine teaching of Islam, and this is why I keep saying when we discuss Islam, we're talking about 100% perfect system of life and way of life. When we're talking about the Rasul ﷺ is a revelation, he's 100% perfect. So both revelation, 100% perfect. We are not perfect. The Muslims are not perfect. Rasul ﷺ encouraged people, the Arabs at that time, to worship only one Allah, one God, and to uphold morally upright life because they were immoral back then. Studying the life of Rasul ﷺ is crucial to understanding his momentous journey from being apparently just an ordinary human being to fulfilling his destiny as a final prophet chosen by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It also helps one gain a deeper insight into the religion of Islam and the lives of us Muslims. Rasul ﷺ, we know he never met his father. He was, and his mother passed away, Amina, may Allah be pleased with her, when he was 6 years old. His grandfather took care of him, as we know, and then his uncle. So he never had a single figure molded him or molded his beliefs or outlook of life in the early age. As a young boy, he worked as a shepherd, and this reminds us, if we study the lives of all the prophets, that all the prophets, or most of them, were shepherds, and he was a shepherd. Then he adopted the occupation of trading, as we know, and was widely respected for his integrity and sincerity. However, despite his intelligence, we know he was illiterate. He did not read or write, nor he was skilled in composing poetry back then, and that was very the hallmark of Arabia back then, to know poetry and write poetry. Therefore, to claim that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam authored the Quran is unfounded. But to this reflect, Allah declares in Surah Al-Najm about the Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam, وَمَا يَنْطِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَىٰ إِنْ هُوَ إِلَّا وَحْيٌ يُوحَىٰ. Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam does not speak from his own desire. The Quran is nothing less than a revelation that is sent to him, to Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Prior to prophethood, Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam was greatly regarded for his superior character and exceptional manners, earning him the title, the Truthful One. Meccans entrusted him in their possessions, as we know, for safeguarding, and he was often asked to mediate dispute as an impartial judge. As we know, at one point there was a conflict among the Arab tribes when they did reconstruction of the Kaaba, and they disputed who's going to put the black stone, and through his wisdom he resolved the problem pretty quick. Then we know later on a rich widow, our mother al-Mu'mineen, Sayyida Khadija, may Allah be pleased with her, took him and employed him and consigned him to her goods to be taken to be sold in Syria. Delighted with the unusual profit she obtained, as also by the personal charm of Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam, she actually the one who went and offered him her hand. And we know it was a successful marriage, and we know the only kids he had is from our mother Khadija. May Allah be pleased with her. At the same time, Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam hated the behavior of the polytheistic Arab, the mushrikeen, and their customs. For one, he did not participate in idol worshipping. He hated it. It's unfortunate that idol worshipping came back to the Arab Peninsula. He was deeply bothered by the many social evils in Arabia, such as the ill treatment of women. We know women are not treated good now either. Widespread alcoholism. One country in the Arab Peninsula is considered the largest consumer of alcohol in the world today. Constant warfare and subjugation of the poor. And this is that time, right? And to fast forward, we are in 1441, the same thing is happening. Warfare and subjugation of the poor. Start from Yemen all the way to Algeria. So whatever the situation was pre-Islamic, pre-prophethood, it's existing right now with us. It's unfortunate. He often escaped the atmosphere of Mecca to Ghar Hira, as we know, outside the city, isolating himself for days and in meditation. Although Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam pre-prophetic life was highly reputable, it does not indicate that he was poised to make any significant worldly impact back then, even though he was known to be trustworthy and dependable. Yet these life experiences and the development of his character was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala way of preparing Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam for the monumental task ahead. So in another word, he did not have a human being molding him. Who molded him was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we know one night in the year of 610 AD or CE, when our beloved Prophet ﷺ, he was 40, and he was in Ghar Hira, and it was toward the end of Ramadan, and it was odd nights, when Jibreel alayhi salam came down to him and told him that he is chosen to be last messenger to all mankind, and he was scared, and he revealed to him, as we know, the first 5 ayats of Surah Iqra. Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq, khalaqal insana min alaq, Iqra rabbuka al-akram alladhi allama bil qalam. Read with the name of the Lord who created man from what clings. Read, and thy Lord is the most bounteous, who taught by the pen, taught man what he knew not. This is the first thing that came to Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam. And he was, as we know, scared, but later on, and went to his wife, very scared, and his wife, as we know, consoled him and told, and he actually thought that it was evil spirit that came to him, but then his wife told him that Allah would protect him against all evil, and she supported his message, as we all know. Now I want you to take into consideration one thing. The Arabs, up to 2 AD or 2 CE, were monotheists, were following the religion of Ibrahim alayhi salam, until Amr ibn Luhay came from tribe of Khuza'a and introduced idol worshipping. So you want to take into consideration from 2 CE until 610, we said CE, the Arabs, how many generations? It depends how you can calculate generation. Is it 25 years or 33 years? So you're talking about 18 to 24 generations. They've seen their grandparents and generations idol worshipping and superstitions and alcoholism and all of these bad behaviors that was rampant in the Arab Peninsula. And all of a sudden, someone, our beloved Prophet ﷺ, came to change all that and tell them you are wrong. Came to reform the rulers of Arabia and the inhabitants of Arabia, to tell them all this what you're doing is wrong. So he came to cause a real revolution. Look how many generations passed by. You think it was an easy task? That was not an easy task for him and for the early Muslims. So Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam, the first thing he was trying to work on was his fellow Meccans to cease their worship of idols and to affirm the oneness of Allah. That's the first thing. He also invited them to a life of righteousness and piety, because they did not have that kind of life. He warned them of an afterlife where they will be held accountable for earthly deeds, right? But they used to believe life is only life in this world, there is no life after this. And gave them joyful news of paradise of those who believed and lived God-conscious life. So he came to deliver these 4 messages. So like previous prophet, Rasul ﷺ was rejected by many of his people. They insisted on maintaining the religious and social customs of their ancestors. You're gonna tell them you're gonna leave the religion of they've been following 18 to 24 generations? It's impossible. It's very hard. The elite of Mecca back then mocked the Rasul ﷺ, accused him of deceit and madness. And before that message, they used to call him the truthful one. The same man whom they fiercely trusted and honored before. Only a few people believed in him, particularly the poor and disadvantaged, who were attracted to his message due to the emphasis of equality and justice. And this is why I always emphasize in my speeches, the message of Islam is equality and justice. So as Rasul ﷺ was saying, Islam came as a stranger. And subhanAllah, like I just mentioned a few minutes ago, that the conditions that were in Mecca before Islam, it's already came back to us now. We are living the same conditions. But the Rasul ﷺ told us Islam will come back as a stranger. So the Prophet ﷺ began by preaching his mission secretly first, as we know, among his intimate friends, then among the members of his own tribe, and thereafter publicly in the city and suburbs. He insisted on the belief in one God, in resurrection and last judgment. He invited men to charity. He took necessary steps to preserve through writing the revelation, because he didn't know how to write, so he asked the companions to write it with whatever, on the leaves of the trees or the skins of the animals, whatever was available back then. And back then they used to be good in memory, so he asked those who are good in memorizing to learn it by heart. This continues all through his life, since the Quran was not revealed all at once but in fragments as occasions arose. The number of his adherents increased gradually, but with the denunciation of paganism, the opposition also grew more intense on the parts of those who firmly attached to their ancestral beliefs. This opposition degenerated in the course of time into physical torture over Rasul ﷺ and the Muslims back then. They used to stretch them in burning sands, in hot irons, and putting rocks in their bodies, and putting chains in their feet. Some of them, as we know, died of the effects of torture, but none would renounce the religion of Islam. In despair, Rasul ﷺ advised his companions to quit their native town and take refuge abroad Abyssinia. And I want you to listen what he said. He said, where governs a just ruler in whose realm nobody is oppressed. And this is narrated by in the book of Ibn Hisham. So a lot of our scholars said, even though the ruler of Abyssinia back then was not a Muslim yet, but the importance of Rasul ﷺ, that when there is injustice toward Muslims, it's important for us to go where is justice, even though the ruler is not a believer. And that's why a lot of us are here in the United States or in Europe or Australia, leaving the injustice of our countries. Dozens of Muslims profited from this advice, and they left. These secret flights led further persecution of those who remained behind. Then later we know about the social boycott that took 3 years. They boycotted the family of Rasul ﷺ and anyone who helped them, whether they were Muslims or non-Muslims. So a lot of non-Muslims, from the kafirs who were helping al-Muslimin at that time, they were included in the boycott. So that situation stayed for 13 years in Mecca, and then eventually the order came from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to migrate to Medina, where he established the first Islamic society, where his goal was to achieve 6 things. And none of the 6 things that I'm about to say apply today. He came to establish the very first Islamic society, which eliminated spiritual and social problems rampant in Arabian Peninsula. These social problems came back again in the Arabian Peninsula today. Freedom of religion was instituted in Medina. There is no freedom of religion in any place in the Arab countries today. Women were honored and respected as equal. Women are not honored today. Racial discrimination was practically eliminated. Racial discrimination is back in Arabia. Tribal warfare was replaced with united ties of brotherhood. There is no united tie of brotherhood today. There is only division and fighting among the Muslims, especially the Arabs. Usury and alcohol, or interest and alcohol, were completely forbidden. There isn't one Arab country that doesn't deal with interest. It's the law of the land. And alcoholism, a lot of the Arab countries brew their own alcohol. And they have casinos now in some of the Arab countries. 6 things that Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam established in al-Medina, none of them apply today in the Arab Peninsula. So we are back to pre-Islamic era. A French historian, his name is Alphonse de Lamartine, stated, if greatness of purpose, because these 6 things I mentioned, this is really great that he was able to accomplish. Greatness of purpose, smallness of means. The Muslims were small in number. They didn't have that much means. And astounding results are the 3 criteria of human genius. Who could dare to compare any great man in modern history with Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? So he's saying Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was a genius to be able to achieve that. When comparing his life before and after becoming a messenger, it becomes clear that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enabled him to attain his stature and renown through his prophethood. By the end of his life on 12 Rabi' al-Awwal, 11 Hijri, the powerful teaching of Islam had overcome even its most passionate enemies. And we know Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam made the Arabs, through Islam, so it gave them supremacy over Arabs and non-Arabs. And then later on, the non-Arabs, Muslims, carried that message of Islam and gave Islam supremacy all over the world up until the beginning of the 20th century. Yet some individuals have alleged that Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam was not a true messenger of Allah but a sham. This reflects a poor understanding of his teaching, the teaching of Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam, of his personality and life achievement. Dr. Montgomery Watt says this about the personality of Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam, and he did not become a Muslim. His readiness, the Rasul readiness, to undergo prosecution for his beliefs, the high moral character of the men who believed in him and looked up to him as a leader, and the greatness of his ultimate achievement all argue his fundamental integrity. To suppose that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, an impostor, that he is an impostor, raises more problems than it solves. Moreover, none of the great figures of history is so poorly appreciated in the West as Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Another American intellectual whose name is Washington Irving said in his private dealing, in Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam private dealings, he was just. So when you read the Quran, we read about justice, and when you read the history of a Rasul, the biography of a Rasul, you're talking about justice. He was just. He treated friends and strangers, the rich and poor, the powerful and weak with equity. and was beloved by the common people for the friendliness with which he received them. He wasn't like the Pope, right? That's what it means without the Pope pretensions. And listened to their complaints. In the time of his greatest power, he maintained the same simplicity of manners and appearance as in the days of his adversity. He was displeased if, on entering a room, any unusual testimonials of respect were shown to him. He didn't like people treating him like astaghfirullah al-azim, as if he's a god. But it's unfortunate today that some of the Muslims committing some kind of innovations, treating him as if he's with us physically, and giving Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam things that he himself, Rasul, warned us against. When we talk about the legacy of Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam, in the century following the death of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Islam expanded in all directions, absorbing Persia and Byzantine Empire to the north, reaching as far as Spain in the west and extending its borders to include parts of India and China to the east. This rapid spread of Islam in such a short period of time has caused many to be amazed at how a man like Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam with a simple message could produce such an astonishing impact on the world. This is why Gandhi, who we know didn't become a Muslim, but we know he learned Islam and was very close to Muslims, he goes and saying about Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam, I wanted to know the best of the life of one who holds today an undisputed sway over the hearts of millions of mankind. I became more than ever convinced that it was not the sword that won a place for Islam in those days in the scheme of life. It was the rigid simplicity of Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam, the utter self-effacement, meaning the quality of not claiming attention to himself. He wasn't a narcissist. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the scrupulous regard for pledges, his intense devotion to his friends and followers, his fearlessness, his absolute trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and in his own mission. These are not the sword carried everything before them and surmounted every obstacle. So he's attesting, Gandhi, that Islam was not spread by sword. Islam was spread by the words of justice and mercy and equity to all mankind. Another British intellectual who is a woman, and she was a women's rights activist, her name is Annie Besant. She said, it's impossible for anyone who studies the life and character of the great Prophet of Arabia, who knows how he taught and how he lived, to feel anything but reverence, deep respect for someone, for that mighty Prophet, one of the great messengers of the Supreme Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, the final prophet in a long line of messengers sent by Allah, which included, among other prophets, as we know, from Adam all the way to Isa alayhi salam. Like previous prophet, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam called people toward the belief on one God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and taught them to be just and merciful. And that's the message of Islam. His life and teaching have been meticulously documented by thousands of historical sources dated back to his companions. One Jewish writer, his name is Michael Hart, says he was the only man in history who was supremely successful on both the religious and secular levels. And this is what I've always been saying in my speeches, that Islam is the only religion, the only system of life that observes the rights of Allah and the rights of the creation of Allah. Non-Muslims realize that, and he's saying the religious and secular level, meaning the creation of Allah. It is this unparalleled combination of secular and religious influence which I feel entitled, that's the writer saying I feel, entitles Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to be considered the most influential single figure in the history of mankind. This is what non-Muslims intellectuals say about Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam. Now I had picked, there is a lot of characters or highlights of Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam, but I picked 10 for today's occasion because I want to end the subject later on, because I don't know how many of you heard the speech of Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam, of the farewell speech. So before I get to the farewell speech toward the end, I want to highlight 10 characters that each and every one of us can take with us to our schools, to our work, to our families. And the first one, as we all know, as I mentioned, is honesty in conducting trade. As we know, and I mentioned earlier, that Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam was extremely honest and trustworthy in his day-to-day affairs. This was a rare quality in the era he lived, when merchants and vendors used to swindle and deceive the consumers for petty profits. When he left on a trade journey, our mother, al-Mu'mineen Khadija, may Allah be pleased with her, at the time trusted him with her products and her goods to be sold, and she attested that he was the only manager that she found much more profits from him. And she said she related that because he's honest. And as the Quran says, when you are God-fearing Allah in all your actions, Allah will give you more. So the lesson from being honestly in conducting trade, not all of us are businessmen, but even when you are working for someone else's dream, when you're working for someone, you're working for someone else's dream. But even if so, just to fulfill your career and to fulfill your ambition, you need to treat that business as if it's yours. You need to give it 100%, because that's the teaching of Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam. That's the behavior and the characters of the Muslims. And if you reach to a point where you cannot give it your 100%, that's the time when you jump to another job. Because it's not from our behavior and character to do half job. We have to do 100% as Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam taught us. This is one thing we can learn from this character of being honest in trade or being honest in our work. We know he upheld the truth all the times. So before that miraculous night, when the Holy Prophet ﷺ was appointed as the final messenger, the whole city of Mecca called him by the worthy name of As-Sadiq al-Amin, the honest and the trustworthy. This not only placed the people firm belief and trust in him, but when he finally began to preach the religion of Allah, people adhered to his attestation. The people who did not believe in Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam, their problem is not that they thinking he's lying. They were worried about their own thrones. They were worried about their own legacy. They were worried about their own status and position. And they didn't want to be equated with the poor of society, right? So if Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam message is to be truthful, we need to develop a reputation of being truthful, whether with our own selves, in our own community, with our own family, with our own employers, or in business. If we are in business, we need to be truthful to our customers. And this kind of behavior is a kind of da'wah or preaching Islam. When people ask you, how is it? And we know, and for a very long time, there are areas in where the largest areas of where Muslims are now, they converted to Islam because of the characters of Muslim businessmen. Okay, so if we uphold that character in our workplace, in our businesses, in our school, that character by itself can be a means of preaching Islam. The third thing, the third lesson from the character of Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam, his focused approach and dedication toward his holy mission. Rasul ﷺ was so focused in his mission to propagate the word of Allah that he was ready to bear every hardship that came his way. When the affluent in Mecca came to realize that he was becoming popular among the masses, they felt threatened, as I mentioned. They chose to offer him incentives so that he gave up preaching the message of Islam. He was offered worldly possessions such as wealth, status of chief of Mecca, and marriage to the most beautiful woman at that time. Yet he remained steadfast toward his purpose and remarked his famous saying, "Even if they place the sun in my right hand and the moon in my left, I will not renounce my mission until I die or God fulfills my mission for me." So those of us who decide to enjoin what's right and forbid what's wrong, we need to understand that it's a thankless mission. It's a mission because this is what happened to Rasul alayhi salam. He was enjoining what's right and forbidding what's wrong. And you were going to have a lot of hardship, especially from other fellow Muslims first. And you're going to have to stand up to it. And you're going to have to know when to push back and when to be patient. But you need to understand from the Prophet ﷺ life that being steadfast on the truth and dying by it, even if you don't have results, is victory in it by itself. So even if you don't get results, just being steadfast on the truth and never deviate from it, even if no one listens to you, right? That's the teaching of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's his dedication toward his holy mission. If you decide to be one of those Muslims who want to do that, just remember that. The fourth one, his compassionate attitude toward enemies and to friends. The Prophet ﷺ was not well received by all. Those who were too absorbed in idol worship refused to listen to his voice of reason and logic, started causing him physical pain and injury. So here, Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam, when he's talking to people, he's using reason and logic. And this is why I always say we have to use reason and logic rather than blind following. His own uncle Abu Lahab wife scattered thorns in his path, yet he never responded back, but simply changed his course. He always gave Jamil, his uncle's wife, respect even though she was very mean and harsh on him. A woman, as we know, used to throw trash on him every day when he walked past her house, but the Rasul ﷺ never rebuked her. Instead, when one day the woman did not show up to throw trash on him, it prompted him to visit her house. Finding her ill and bedridden, he was kind to her and inquired after her health. The woman was thoroughly ashamed of her action and repented at once, accepting Islam. That's how she accepted Islam. This is how the Prophet used his merciful trait to conquer his enemies and convert them into his well-wishers. I'm sure I'm not the only one. Every now and then at work we get some indirect racist remark to the way that you cannot even take it to HR because it can carry many messages, they will tell you. But you know deep inside you, it's a racist remark. We need to learn how to accept this racist remark with a smile and turn them into your directions. And I've been successful with it. It took a long time to learn that, but you can learn that from Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam and follow the way he did it. And believe me, they start respecting you, and they know you. They know. I'm sure they know you pray. They know you go to the mosque and all these things. And eventually they will respect you for who you are. The fifth thing, I'm running out of time. His modest attitude as a ruler. We know he first was the ruler of Medina, and then later on the ruler of Mecca and all over Arabia before he passed away. But even though he was the ruler, he was the Khalifa of our time, but he was also our messenger. He was beloved by his companions. Rasul ﷺ never distinguished himself from his companions. This is what the British writer meant, that he was the Pope, but without the Pope pretensions. He was down to earth with his companions. He ate what they ate. He dressed as they dressed, and he used to talk to them in courteous way. His charisma was entirely based on his friendly and loving attitude that charmed everyone around him to an end. So we need to be like that with each other if all the times. We can't be, if someone of us have a higher status or higher education or more money or whatever status they are in, to look down at others. We need to be coming down to earth and be modest with each other. The sixth habit that he had that I'm talking about is leading by example. Each parent, each one of us, we need to lead by example. First our own kids, our own wives and kids, and then our surroundings. But he led by example. He was always a role model, an example for his followers. In the famous Battle of the Trench, the Muslims were outnumbered and awfully short in supplies. They were all hungry. Some of the companions had a rock, and they would tie it with one piece of cloth or scarf that they used to put in their head. Rasul ﷺ would lift up his shirt and show them that I have too. So he was like them, hungry. It's not like they are hungry and he's full. No, he was more hungry than them. He was leading by example. That's something that doesn't happen today. You will see our people, the Muslims, a lot of them are hungry, and yet the rulers are building mansions. But they go and say they follow Rasul ﷺ. They don't. The seventh habit is his sense of merit, meaning commendable quality or act. He came as a liberator of all oppressed and victims. If he came as liberator of all oppressed and the victims, that makes each and every one of us liberators of all oppressed and victims. This is our mission of life. Whether they are Muslims or non-Muslims, we need to act like we are liberators. Sayyidina Bilal, may Allah be pleased with him, was an Abyssinian slave before he became Muslim. Due to this fact alone, just he was from Abyssinia, and through wars he was taken as a slave, as we know. He was looked down upon as well as subjugated to harsh treatment and ridicule. But once he became a Muslim, he became a distinguished personality for all times until today. We follow the teaching of the companion of Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam, Sayyidina Bilal radiallahu anhu, for all times as being the first Muslim to announce the call of prayers, azan, from top of the Kaaba. Khalid ibn al-Walid, as we know, he inflicted serious damages to the Muslims, especially in the Battle of Uhud, where he killed a lot of Muslims. But as soon as he accepted Islam, he convinced Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam was able to soften the hearts of the other Muslims that he is one of us, and he gave him the title of the Sword of Allah, Sayfullah al-Maslul. Hence, Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam has a sense of merit and logic, was always present in all judgments of the merciful Prophet of mankind. We need to be like that with each other. Every now and then we will make mistakes. But once we apologize and sincerely apologize to one another and show through actions, not words, through actions, that I want to repent and make up for my mistake, we should accept it rather than always judge each other for past mistakes. The eighth character, putting to use everything for good. As we know, in the Battle of Badr, Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam took a lot of prisoners, and whoever was not able to pay their ransom, could obtain freedom if they taught 10 Muslims to read or write, because the Rasul ﷺ was emphasizing on that, on education. So this fact alone shows the wisdom of Rasul ﷺ and his willingness to adopt anything that was beneficial and good for his people. Where are we today from this habit? This act of the Holy Prophet ﷺ also goes to show how much importance and emphasis he laid on education. But not only education, where are we from this habit of turning whatever something we have, that our situation, if it's bad, we turn it into good. Like today, in this country, we are looked now that we are bad after the Muslim ban and these things. And I always emphasize the importance. We need to utilize this tragedy on the Muslims today to unite ourselves and learn from Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam, putting the situation that we are in that is negative, turn it into a good thing. But we are not able to do that yet. The ninth character is a simple life with little regard to worldly possession. And again, this is the British author who said he's like the Pope without the Pope pretensions. He lived very simple life, a man of humble means and behavior. The Holy Prophet ﷺ adopted a simple and modest lifestyle. Despite being the conqueror of Mecca, he did not take the worldly treasures or possessions. The night of his passing, the great Prophet ﷺ household did not even have oil to light a lamp. Such was his greatness that his regard for this world was nothing as compared to the spiritual world. And we know in the Battle of Khaybar, the Muslims took a lot of possessions and bounties from the Jews. And he was able to give that to himself and to his wives, but he refused. He gave it to the new Muslims that converted in Mecca to help them stay in Islam. And he kept living a simple life. The last character that I want to talk about, his pleasant disposition and cheerful manner. Something that we need to practice, at least with ourselves. The Holy Prophet ﷺ was a man of high spirits and lofty character. We know that he used to always smile, and he taught us that a smile, just smiling with your brother, not even only your Muslim brother, smiling to a non-Muslim even, just saying good morning to them, or helping an elderly non-Muslim with a smile, that will be considered for you as a charity. That's the character of, that's how he was with Muslims and non-Muslims, and we need to learn that from him. He was always respectful of the old, caring toward the weak, and loving toward the children. His wives and daughters took great joy in his company, as did his companions. He used to spread a sheet of cloth in respect for his daughter Fatima. May Allah be pleased with her. Maybe that's hard for us to do that to our daughters, but that's the respect he had for his daughter. And foster mother Halima Sa'diyah, may Allah be pleased with her. Every time he used to see her, he would welcome her and treat her like his own mother. Every time they paid a visit to him, the Prophet ﷺ was known not to decline anyone's request for anything at any time. He was always offering to help if he can help. Muslims are fortunate to have a role model and perfect guide in the form of a Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam. Achieving the same level of success that he is impossible. This is why I teach our students here, consider him as a North Star. We are never gonna reach, but let try our best, to the best of our ability, to aim that high, and we will land somewhere that is high. But are we ever gonna be reaching to his level? That will be impossible. We will never reach there. But the purpose of his life was for us to study, learn, and implement his virtues in order to succeed in this life and the life hereafter. And that's how he lived his life. I don't know how many of you completely read the sermon, the farewell sermon that he had, the last speech that he did. And that was in 10 Hijri of obviously Dhul Hijjah. So he starts after praising and thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He said, "O people, lend me an attentive ear, for I know not whether after this year I shall ever be amongst you again. Therefore listen to what I'm saying very carefully and take these words to those who could not be present here today. O people, just as you regard this month, obviously the month of Dhul Hijjah, this day, this city as sacred, so regard the life and property of every Muslim as sacred trust." That's something that's not happening today. "Return the goods entrusted to you to their rightful owners. Hurt no one, so that no one may hurt you." This is all what we do, Muslims hurting other Muslims. "Remember that you will indeed meet your Lord, and that He will indeed reckon your deeds. Allah has forbidden you to take usury interest. Therefore all interest, obligation shall henceforth be waived." I mentioned earlier, look at the Muslim world indulged in interest. "Your capital is yours to keep. You will neither inflict nor suffer any iniquity." But do we trust that? That's the problem of the Muslims today. They don't trust that. They don't have that yaqeen, that certainty. "Allah has judged that there shall be no interest, and that all interest due to Abbas ibn Abdul Muttalib, the Prophet uncle, be waived. Every right arising out of homicide in pre-Islamic days is henceforth waived, and the first such right that I waive is that arising from the murder of Ibn Rabi'a ibn al-Harith. O people, the unbelievers indulge in tampering with the calendar in order to make permissible that which Allah forbade, and to forbid that which Allah has made permissible. In other words, to make the halal haram and to make the haram halal. Fast forward 1441, the Muslims are doing the same thing, making the halal haram and the haram halal. With Allah, the months are 12 in number. 4 of them are holy. 3 of these are successive, and 1 occurs singly between the month of Jumada and Shaban, and that's obviously the month of Rajab. Beware of the devil, beware of Shaitan, Lucifer, Satan, whatever you want to call him. For safety of your religion, he has lost all hope of that he will be able to lead you astray in big things, so beware of following him in small things. That's exactly what we did, and that's exactly why we are where we are today. O people, it is true that you have certain rights regarding your women, but they also have rights over you. Remember that you have taken them as your wives only under Allah's trust and with His permission. If they abide by your right, then to them belongs the right to be fed and clothed in kindness. Do treat your women well and be kind to them, for they are your partners and committed helpers. He did not say they are your slaves or your maids. And it is your right that they do not make friends with anyone of whom you do not approve, as well as never be unchaste. O people, listen to me in earnest. Worship Allah, say your 5 daily prayers, fast during the month of Ramadan, and give your wealth in zakah. Perform Hajj if you can afford to. As I always mention, it's unfortunate that the Muslims are not paying their zakat. Not because we are here paying our zakat, that means every Muslim who says La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah pay their zakat. Because if we all Muslim collectively pay our zakat, there will not be one poor Muslim. We are the most poorest countries in the world. And there is no reason for us to be poor. All mankind is from Adam and Eve. An Arab has no superiority over a non-Arab, nor a non-Arab has any superiority over an Arab. Also, a white has no superiority over a black, nor a black has any superiority over a white, except by piety and good actions. Where are we today from that? Learn that every Muslim is a brother to every Muslim, and that the Muslims constitute one brotherhood. Nothing shall be legitimate to a Muslim which belongs to a fellow Muslim unless it was given freely and willingly. Today, Muslims robbing other Muslims forcibly. Just look at the Muslim world, what's happening. Do not, therefore, do injustice to yourselves. We exactly did the opposite. Remember, one day you will meet Allah and answer your deeds. So beware, do not stray from the path of righteousness after I'm gone. Have we listened? O people, no prophet or apostle will come after me, and no new faith will be born. Reason well, therefore, O people, and understand my words which I convey to you. I leave behind me two things, the Quran and my Sunnah, and if you follow these, you will never go astray. Do you understand what happened to us? We left it. This is why I always come back to the source. Let's go back to the Quran and the Sunnah from the source. All those who listen to me shall pass on my words to others, and those to others again. And may the last ones understand my words better than those who listen to me directly. Be my witness, O Allah, that I have conveyed your message to your people. And that was his final message, and I would say I delivered my message to you. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. ربنا آمنا فاغفر لنا ذنوبنا وكفر عنا سيئاتنا وتوفنا مع الأبرار. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. We have a brother